Kathlyn Horan. We were just sitting backstage, and I love the fact that she was like, okay, there's about 4 minutes left, and the song, I was like, oh, you're playing it, you can see it in your head, and you're saying,
in my sleep.
Well, let's go back to the beginning, before it was in your sleep. How did we get here? How did this project come to you?
It came without a lot of preparation. So I've known Brandi Carlile for about 10 or 15 years. I met her through Indigo Girls, who y'all might be familiar with, the Georgia-based group. And I did some work with her as we got to know each other. She has a foundation called the Looking Out Foundation that was in support of one of my last films that worked with women in prison in Washington State. So I went and did a piece for that. She would go in the prison and play for the women, and a music video of her. So we had a creative relationship. And so I got a text one Sunday morning from her wife that said, "You want to hear something crazy?" So naturally I did. And we got on the phone, and she told me she had this opportunity to go in the studio with Tanya, that she and Shooter Jennings, Waylon Jennings' son, were going to produce her first album in the better part of 17 years. And she'd spoken to Rick Rubin about it, who had done Johnny Cash's American Recordings, and she wanted advice from him, like, how do you work with a legend? Because obviously, as you've seen the film now, you understand what an important part Tanya played in Brandi's life, musically, and informed her presence as a woman and her toughness. And among many things, Rick said, make sure that you document this. And so she told me all that and said, what do you think, you want to do this? And I said, of course, yes, I'm in. When do we start? And she said, tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, lesson is always answer a text from Brandi Carlile's wife, because something interesting will be good to transpire, certainly. But I just said, give me an hour, let me see if I can get some folks. Like I said, yes, we'll make it happen, just give me a minute. And luckily, Jessica Young, who's a DP that I work with a lot, was available. One of my best friends, Denise Plum, was like, you gotta get down here, we need some help. Fred Steuben, incredible sound recordist. So it was just the right people who could inhabit that space, have familiarity with the music business, and a deep love of music like I do. So it was kind of like amazing that it all worked out.
And were there conversations with Tanya beforehand? Okay, what did that part of the process
She said, in fact, we were in Toronto at Film Festival, and like she and I haven't really talked a lot about the process of the film, after the film. And so they were sitting down kind of asking that question, and like, how did this begin? She's like, I'd like to know, because nobody asked me. Did anybody ever ask me? And that's not true. It's like, Tanya, we did. Like, you have a team, and we did talk about it. But so she was made aware that this was going to happen, and we were going to be filming it, but we never knew what was going to happen a couple days into it. And on day 2, I went to Brandi, and I went to Tanya's team and said, you know, I want to keep filming this. There's something amazing happening here. So can I just like hang around as we move forward? And Tanya said, at some point, you know, I don't do anything unless there's a camera on me. So she was also enjoying being documented. So it worked out. Now she understands.
Oh, well, obviously Brandi is a huge part of this film, and I was really captivated watching it. Just what a fantastic natural interviewer she is for you. But was that a nice discovery? Did you know that was going to be helpful in the process? And how much of that was for this production versus just her doing her songwriting process?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was, she just started doing it. She just started asking those questions because, as you see in the film, she'd never met her before, and she had this opportunity to have her hero right in front of her, and all these things that she's been wondering or thinking about as a kid, she could ask these things. And Tanya's an incredible storyteller, and so Tanya was ready to talk about this stuff, and to have someone so curious about her life and such a fan, I think also felt really good, because she was so nervous about stepping into this and had a lot of trepidation. And so I think there's a comfort in that, and she was just happy to share these stories. And it worked out well for us making the film, she occasionally would come over like, this is amazing, like, what do you think? I was like, yeah, keep talking, I keep asking questions, but there were no planted things, like, make sure you cover this, make sure you cover that. And I'm not that type of filmmaker anyway. It's very much fly on the wall, and whatever happens, and we'll figure it out in the edit how to put it together. But it was a gift to have that exchange, which helped us. Initially, in the beginning, we thought, well, do we need to have talking head interviews and have other people? Because I wanted to go interview like Wanda Jackson and Willie Nelson and talk about outlaws, and we didn't need it. Like, I also wanted to structure this in a different way, that it could be in Tanya's voice, and we didn't need other people. And Brandi's our way in to ask all these things that I would have wanted to know.
So how essential was, and walk me through the process of getting and then selecting what you were going to use of the family's archival footage?
So her archival was a fun journey. A couple weeks in Nashville in her basement. Prior to that, we did, like, our archival producers went out for everything that out there in existence, you know, that we would license eventually. But I was hopeful that there was the Super 8 footage of Tanya's, because I had seen in a music video she did early on about her dad that there was some Super 8 stuff and some earlier pieces done on her. So one of the main things that I was looking for was that, and I had asked Tanya, and she said, oh, I think that's in a trailer out in Oklahoma, and I haven't seen that stuff. I do Tanya Tucker impressions now, if you haven't. So we get to Nashville, go into the basement, and start opening these boxes, and there's boxes and boxes of stuff that have a variety of semi-organized, like labeling on the outside, some not. And she kept everything, which was amazing. And so in one box, there's like an itinerary of her and Glenn Campbell on some trip that they took, and then a photo of her as a kid playing in a bar, and then I found her baby teeth in an envelope. So it's like that kind of stuff. And then in the very back, like all these boxes, I found a VHS and 3/4, and her mom recorded all of these things. So there's all these VHSs of everything that she'd done, and also just things like Elvis's funeral. Like, there was incredible stuff. And the very last box, underneath all the other boxes, I opened it up, and there was reels and reels of the Super 8 film, which became the guiding principle to use, because we wanted the archival to feel like the verite. So it wasn't like, and now here's a section, but dreamlike memories and explorations of her past, just as she was telling me stories. And amazingly, you know, her dad, like, they didn't have any money, but he managed to, like, record everything and shot it really well. Like, there were these great shots of her on a horse shot from a car. It's like, thank you, Bo Tucker, for knowing how to do a tracking shot. And everything that she was talking about, she would tell these stories, and then I would see it in the Super 8 footage. Like, oh, there's you going to Nashville. There's you and your dad getting in the station wagon. So it was luck that we were able to pair things together and keep it in her voice and show the journey. And it's actually her favorite part of the film, and I had that in mind. Like, Tanya's gonna not like looking at herself, doesn't like to see herself just like most folks do, but she's really gonna enjoy the whole movie part. So I was like, you're gonna love 20% of this film.
What has her feedback been now that she's seen it?
So she chose to see it for the first time at South by Southwest, like in the theater with other people, which is a courageous decision. And I think the way that you should receive a movie about yourself is with other people, so you can get what people are feeling, because you can't really be objective about yourself. I showed it to Brandi prior, because Brandi did the score of the film, and so I had to send her a cut, and not a cut I would ever send anyone. It was really long, and I said, like, a million caveats. I would never send you this. Let's do all the stuff about it. So we had seen it and discussed it, and she was very, like, you know, hands off. Also, like, looking at myself as a producer was hard, but she got it and understood it. And so we then went to Tanya, like, how do you want to watch this? Because we can watch it together, we can watch it with a group, but I don't want to send you I don't want you to just watch it by yourself. So she thought about it, and she said, I'll see it at South by. So amazing, but terrifying. It's like, what if she hates it? We're in a theater full of people. That's not gonna go well. And I sat next to her son Grayson, her daughter Presley, and he was like punching me and crying through the whole thing. And Presley afterwards said to me, that's my mom. So they were happy, and Tanya was happy. She had a blast. She was overjoyed. However, so Sony Classics picks it up at South by Southwest, and then we were re-premiering it with them at Telluride, and right before Telluride, at 1 a.m., I get these texts. I think it was in the bathroom when that part about the camel toe was in there, and I don't know how I feel about it. Like, I didn't have a camel. And then I call her, and then she texts me, like, kind of these things, like, not saying take anything out of the film, but like discussing the film. I was like, but Tanya, it's kind of done, and that was six months ago. Because I'd sent her a link. She texted me, and it's like, I'm with my friends. I want to, like, just give me, like, send our movie over. I want to play it for my friends. And so we just keep talking about it, and now it's like we're joking back and forth. But I said, well, one Q&A one day, I'm just going to read all my texts from her through the process of the film.
Dramatic reading, I love it. It's great now you're text friends, Tanya Tucker. What's your personal relationship with her and her music prior to this?
So I grew up here in Georgia, and obviously Tanya Tucker was around, and I grew up with a lot of music in my house. My mom's here. Shout out to my mom. She said she was going to stand up and ask a question about, like, you know, basically take credit for this film, I think was the goal for having me. But we had a lot of music in our house, so music was a big part of our world. Like, she loves Pavarotti, my dad loved Mozart, and Frank Sinatra, and Ella Fitzgerald, Etta James, so music was always a big part, and I thank you for that, Mom, for making that, like, such an important part of our life. And then just in general, growing up here, you know, of course, Delta Dawn is ubiquitous and became part of that, but I also became very interested in, like, Tanya, Loretta, Tammy, in my late teens, early 20s, and, like, more purposefully was listening to that type of early, you know, country roots Americana music, and then just gravitated towards it because the storytelling is just incredible, like the Southern Gothic tales, like what could be better? But Tanya as a person also was someone that, and I grew up queer in the South, and Tanya became kind of an icon to a lot of folks in the community because she lived her life on her own terms and kind of felt a little bit beat up and pushed outside. And so her, as Brandi's, you know, her toughness, kind of same thing for Brandi, is like she represented a way a person could be and like be themselves entirely and authentically and not listen to what the world was telling you. And she also, you know, wanted to be like tough and play rock and roll, and so she was just super cool and represented something different. So for me, she was always a hero in that capacity of like her music and how she chose to live her life.
So having that personal history of being a fan and following her life and as well as her career, what did you find that surprised you as you started to spend all this time with her and then all this time with her footage?
Yeah. I think I was surprised at how easy it was to be around her. And like there's the mythological Tanya that I knew, as I just described, who seems bigger than life in a lot of ways. And so that first day showing up, and you know, Brandi and Shooter were nervous. We were all like, is she gonna come? And also it was like, is she gonna hate this? Is she gonna not want us to be a part of it? And she was so genuinely like wonderful and warm and kind and just like, do you want to put it back on me? Go on, like whatever you want, honey. You're having tequila. You know, it was very much like she's just like the nicest, loving human, and there was no walls between, because you know, me it's like she's a legend, like this is incredible. And there was none of that about her. She's just like, you know, I think it's that. You expect people are gonna have these protections and things about them at that level, and she's just, you know, she's like a down-home cowgirl, basically.
So, I know you mentioned originally you thought maybe you'd do these talking head interviews and talk to Willie and everyone. How did this evolve? And at what stage did it start to evolve? When did you unlock what this film was going to be?
I think once we had all the footage in the studio, and then the time to look back at it, and then once Brandi started, like we just kept, there were all these mile markers, the record was done, and Brandi like, okay, we're gonna play the record back for Tanya. And she hasn't heard it. So we'd keep showing up for these events. And then she was gonna play Loretta's birthday. Then she didn't show up, you know, for the rehearsal and keep everybody on their toes. And I think it was about that point that it seemed like we have a story here. And it's also a story with, you know, a supporting character, and Brandi helping Tanya push past her fears and move forward, and came up with the idea that this is has a more narrative structure in a traditional way, where we have an arc, we have challenges, we have like false wins, and then that it could go on a real journey and a ride. So that became very clear that that was possible. And then I also, as I got to know Tanya more, wanted a film that felt like her, and she wouldn't have a traditional biopic. It would be, you know, she also acted a lot and continues to do that, and I know she would want like a movie. That, not that traditional biopics aren't movies, but more like a narrative film that took you on a journey and was unpredictable and hilarious and was a ride. And so that became like, I wanted the film to feel like her and be true to her stylistically. And then once we got into edit and realized that we could have all the information that we needed, along with the archival and the present day, that this could work. And that's a testament to Brady Hammis, the editor, and Toby Sherman, our supervising editor, that helped put the puzzle together.
Speaking of putting the puzzle together, walk us through the logistics, like how many days did you shoot and over what span of time?
So we started January 2019 and principal photography through January 2020 at the Grammys, so that was the end of January. And right before the pandemic, which also, as I tell Tanya, it was like, you know, I got to spend the pandemic just looking at you. She was like, oh, what's wrong with you? So that was the basic period of time, and I think we shot, the studio itself was about 9 days, and we shot for maybe 30 something all told, and then we went back into little pickup shoots for location establishers and things like that. But yeah, 30 something days, I think.
And now that you're getting to share this with the world, we know what Tanya's thoughts were, but what has been the most rewarding or most surprising reactions you've gotten as more people get to see this film?
I think there's the thing that you hope, you know, and then when the film comes out, because the process is like birthing a baby sideways, you know, not that I've had a child, but I can imagine. Like, it's a tough process, and when you put it out in the world, you hope that the thing that you've created is received in the same way. And then it's like, you want your subjects to enjoy it, and what does the general public think? And as I joke, Tanya really does enjoy it. We were just in New York doing press, and she had a blast, and she's starting to have fun with this whole thing. But there was a guy in Toronto, I should go back and tell you right. I mean, South by Southwest was just kind of a crazy journey. Like, I wasn't in my body through that process. So, but people loved it. It was really fun. And then when I got to go kind of on my own with audiences, folks were coming out at Telluride saying, like, I'm glad that's the last film I saw. It's like full of joy, but kind of misty-eyed, but full of joy at a time when I feel like we need a lot of it. And so that kind of receiving, and I've gotten like some DMs from a guy, big old burly guy who came out of the Toronto Film Festival with like tears in his eyes, saying how much it meant to him. And then he wrote me a message that he was there with his mom, who was a Tanya Tucker fan for life, and I think with his daughter as well. And so we had like a couple generations of fans, and I wanted the true Tanya fans to love this film, but also bring in new audiences. And I think that was because, you know, Tanya fans are tried and true, and it's like, that's our Tanya. So I wanted it to be like, make the our Tanya people who love her in the way that I do, but have new folks see something in her that they hadn't yet discovered. And so far, that seems to be working. I mean, you guys can tell me afterwards if you think I'm wrong.
We'll make the judge. Well, I think one of the other beautiful things here is that we get a little a Polaroid maybe of Loretta as well, and that has to mean a lot to you as a fan, but I'm sure it means a lot to Tanya as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's been the huge loss for everyone, the music business, and I mean, you know, she's such a gift, an incredible songwriter and trailblazer, and I'm such a fan, and so that was obviously more meaningful now than it was then. And as you see in the film, like, you know, Loretta was really there for Tanya. Like, you have Brady and Tanya's friendship is sort of the beginning of having that kind of thing, and then we get to see what it's like to have, you know, women really supporting women and standing by each other. And Loretta's always been there for Tanya. It's like, you know, asking if she needs any money, songwriting ideas, and as soon as that moment happened, which was Loretta, you know, Loretta and Tanya's kind of conversation about Bring My Flowers Now, so then she gets to play at Loretta's birthday concert, and then ultimately win the Grammy for it. And Loretta calling her before she goes on at the exit in was all of this aside, that was my favorite moment in the entirety of filmmaking. As we're on the bus and I hear this voice, and Jessica's up filming and I'm in the back, and it was like, I think I hear Loretta Lynn talking to Tanya on the phone, like these two legends are talking to each other, and her friend is calling her to give her a pep talk to go on and play. It's like, this is incredible. And I told this at the panel the other day, but what's not on screen is a further piece of that, which has been heavy on my mind lately, where outside of the bus in the parking lot, there were these guys holding peacock feathers wandering around, and it's like, I don't know what's going on here, that's interesting. And so a little while later, when we're on the bus, I hear Loretta say to Tanya, "Did you get my peacock feathers? I sent those peacock feathers over there for you." And so she sent these young men from her ranch, got her peacock feathers, they drove all the way, it's not close, drove all the way out to the exit in to give Tanya peacock feathers and said, "Well, I want you to get on that stage and I want you to strut around like a peacock because you're a peacock." And she's like, "I put them in my hat and I'm gonna wear them out there on stage," and she did. And so that's the, like, you know, forever playing in my mind, and I'm really mad that that's not in the film. But, you know, perhaps there'll be a director's cut coming soon. But that's like, it's amazing, and she meant so much, and I always wanted to, in the filming, because Tanya would go hang out with Loretta, I was hoping one day to film that and also screen the film for her, which we didn't end up getting to do. But I'm so glad that people can see that special friendship, because a lot of this film is ultimately about friendship and how to support each other, or as we kind of called it, like it's like Thelma and Louise, but with a happier ending. And Loretta plays a big part in that.
You know, I think extrapolating some of the things that you've said here already was you found a way to say yes. You were willing to evolve your thoughts. Knowing that, you know, obviously SCAD is an educational institution, I'd love to close out with a more generic question about filmmaking in terms of just what's the best advice that you would give or gotten? What's the worst advice you've gotten?
Wait for the money before you start something. That's the worst advice. Because that's just not how it works. Like I mean, look, it probably works that way for Steven Spielberg, okay, but like and other folks, but
He just assumes he has the money.
yes, yeah, exactly. But I think that, and I said this when we were having this conversation for the same reason earlier, that, you know, the storytelling is so important, and as someone coming up in the South, like particularly like passing down of stories and keeping track of our history, and it's how we have always learned from the beginning of time. This is how, you know, this has all evolved from the exchange of information and the preservation of information. And so with that, like whatever negative story you believe in, don't let anything stand in your way. And regardless of the money, this my mom will also tell me, don't tell people that, you should get a regular job. My mom doesn't talk like Tanya. I just did that in Tanya's accent. My mom doesn't sound like that at all. But it is like, never give up on a story and the belief, and you've got to believe in yourself. And in these days, it's like, if you don't have a camera, you can use an iPhone. Like, or if you don't have an iPhone, you can record it, you can animate it. But it starts with you, and it starts with passion, and you can never give up on that. And there's always going to be people around you to support you, and other filmmakers you can go and ask for advice for and guide the way. So, I mean, that my only advice is just there's no reason to stop.
Well, we appreciate the fact that you don't stop. Thank you for being a storyteller. Thank you all for being here. And please tell all your friends to check it out. Thank you all.